Welcome to Real Estate Road Riches. Today, I have asked our team to talk about a topic that's fascinating me. We have had a young man come to one of our Clear Sky Deal Meetups who is very scrappy, going out trying to wholesale and also trying to get himself a place to live. And as a lot of young people will tell you, I think fairly, it's pretty hard out there to get a place to live for yourself, and there's actually a way to do it that we think young people can do with a little bit of footwork while they're also maybe trying to find properties to wholesale. So some people call this house hacking. There's other words for it, but what this young fellow was talking about with me and some of the others basically was to find a fourplex in DC. And a fourplex in DC just basically means it's a good sized single building that has four small apartments in it, oftentimes two bedroom apartments. And there's a big stock of these that are available to renovate, everywhere from completely destroyed to slightly damaged. And the idea there, and we should talk a little bit about it. So, well, how can this young fella finance this and get this property and use it himself and make his start on real estate investing? Does that all make sense, guys?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the reveal on that one?
Yeah, yeah. The exciting reveal is what people have when you're thinking about investment. Interest rates are high right now, as we all
Well,
know.
relative to
And
their low, but not relative to their mean over
this
time.
is true. This is true in the 90s. In the 90s, they were closer to 14%, I think, at one point, and
Yeah, for
now
sure.
7% is it's just high because it used to be 2.5%.
That's right. But it
It's
was never two and a
definitely
half before
manageable.
that.
It's but it certainly creates a barrier to entry, and the numbers on a lot of the properties costs are pretty high compared to income levels. So, but when you buy your first home and you live in it, any kind of home, a condo, this fourplex I'm talking about, you can get the best rates that are available. Because of it's owner occupied as opposed to an investment property, but also there are a lot of programs out there for young first time home buyers. And that's what he's been looking into a good bit with the SBA and some of the others, so that he could get a very low down payment purchase, buy this property as his home to live in. He indeed would live in it, and no fraud here. He would live in one of the apartments and, with a bit of sweat equity, fix up the whole property and start renting out those other units to the point that he should be able to be, frankly, self-sufficient on that property just from the income of the rentals. And there's quite a lot of need, obviously, for reasonably priced rentals in the district. Renting in the district has its own fund we've talked about before and can in the future. So none of this is quote unquote easy, but it is a way to get to try to do something like this. Sam, I don't know if maybe you could talk a little bit about the starter loan program that DC had, and if you know anything about those sorts of SBA programs are out there,
Yeah,
what
there are
sort of
many
loans you
programs.
can
I think
find.
I read there are literally hundreds of loan programs out there, and they're very specialized. The one that you're referencing is one for they call HPAP in DC. It enables people to have down payment assistance and bring less money to the closing. That's a smaller program now because of DC's funding issues. But there are a lot of programs out there for firefighters, for teachers. The banks will have different ones depending on the line of work that you're in. Perhaps you're a doctor or a nurse, they might have one as well. So these are ones to consider. And then there are also in Virginia, they also have the Virginia VHDA program, which is also a down payment assistance program. So they're community based, and if you're working with your realtor and your finance person, so if you have a more sophisticated finance person, they're going to have access through their company to a lot of these different programs, and you can find your suitability for them. So you're looking for down payment assistance, basically bringing your costs down. Now that's if you have money coming in as income that you could and decent credit. So income, decent credit, and down payment assistance can be a zero money proposition, as you proposed here. There's also a model which is similar to what you're saying, is where you get this fourplex, you get hard money to purchase it, you get it under control and appropriate condition, you move into one of the units, you rent out the other units, and then you get a replacement loan as an investment loan just based on the income stream that's associated with that. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have a very low price basis. So in the district, in Northern Virginia and environs, this is going to probably put you like in a more in a community that's developing more now and is perhaps not as desirable in terms of price and affluence. So you might be in like Ward 8 of the district, where there are, as you say, are a lot of fourplexes that you can buy. And one of the interesting things is a lot of people get in trouble with their renovations in the district. You could possibly take it to the next level and replace someone's purchase, step in where they're being foreclosed on a fourplex, because I've seen those go too. And you have to be a bit more experienced with the construction in order to do that. So I think perhaps a rundown fourplex would be the best place to start, in a place where affordability makes sense and that you can house hack it. Now, if you can do that in Northeast DC, all the better. It's harder to do in Northwest, but this is the basics of getting it together and looking for those opportunities to ones where you can house hack. That's the first good step to getting a larger multi-unit. And of course, even you could house hack without any preconditions, is the house in Fairfax County or house in Prince George's County, where you buy a 4-bedroom unit. We looked at one yesterday in Maryland, in Baltimore. You can look 4 or 5 bedrooms, buy that house using hard money, put some tenants in there, perhaps students, rent each room out for $1,000. Suddenly you're living in the basement. You've got $4,000 in cash flow on that house. The house is only a $500,000 house. You can go and refinance that out of a hard money loan. So these are like very specific but aggressive methods to go find houses, find good values, house hack it, and start right there. Now, if you're buying, and you're going to hold that, that's going to be part of your core residential portfolio. You might own that. I know Charlie owned the one that he house hacked. He still owns it 30 years later. So we're talking about house hacking, and we're talking about doing it in a multi-unit or doing it in a single family, and that's a great starting point at which you could use hard money plus some what we call gap financing, if the hard money lender will allow for it. So the hard money gives you 95%. You can get 5% from a gap funder. Your gap funder is that 5%. That would be possibly a family member, a close associate, someone who's got 5% to give you, and you give them a decent return, and you tell them, look, we're going to be out of this in a year. This loan we're going to be out of. I'm going to keep this place. It's going to be a place I'm going to stay in. We're going to be responsible for it. And it makes it a whole lot easier when you're doing this level of ground level work, right? You got one project, you've got one room you got to get painted, you got this and that to get in order. You can handle that on your own, and you're in it, and you're there day to day. So if I think back to when I started in a co-op, which is the lowest cost form of ownership, was the only co-op in this region. We bought one unit. It was 3 bedrooms. They were very small. I rented out 2 of the bedrooms and stayed in one and offset my costs until I moved to a single family house, in which case one of the roommates came with me, who's my college roommate, and he stayed in the basement, and he stayed there for I don't know how many years till he moved out. And so we house hacked until we got stabilized, and that was at a time when it was a lot easier to buy a house. So this is a method that worked then, and it will work now.
All right. So now what we'll do is we'll transition into the owner-occupied world and the investment world, and how to buy properties as rentals with no money down. And so you have to start with your understanding of different financing topics. And so for this thing, we'll cover a few of them. We'll cover hard money financing, which is where a lender will lend you money based on the hard asset. We'll cover this thing called debt service coverage ratio loans, DSCR loans. We'll cover loan assumptions. That's where you assume an FHA or a VA loan. We'll cover subject to financing on how to purchase properties with no money down. And then what we're going to do is we'll combine all these different financing techniques in order to buy your first rental property with no money down. The first step, though, to buy a property no money down, though, is you have to buy a property that has a lot of equity in it. So you've got to buy a distressed asset, 65 to 70 cents on value, right? So then what you would do is once you found that asset and you're buying into a good equity point, you get a hard money lender to finance 100% of it. You come out of your pocket with no money. They'll also finance the renovation to get that thing rental ready. Then once you have a tenant in the house, now remember, you haven't used any of your money yet. Once you get a tenant into the house, right, you then refinance out the hard money lender with something called a debt service coverage ratio loan, DSCR. And so what they'll do is they'll use the income of the house itself to give you a loan. You use the DSCR loan, pay off your hard money lender, and there you go. You've now owned a house with using your none of your own money.
Yes, you've covered two there: hard money and debt service coverage ratio.
Right. The next one is, and this happened to Ed on a house in Culpeper, where one of our students bought this house subject to the existing financing. And subject to means you don't assume the loan, but you actually buy the loan subject to the underlying loan. Subject, hence the term subject to. And in this particular case, I don't remember, Ed, what was the interest rate on that subject to loan? It was about, was it 2 7/8, 3 1/4?
It was in the twos, maybe 2.85 or 2.78,
Right,
something
right.
like that.
So subject to 2.85. So she bought a property. I don't remember the exact numbers. I think the subject to loan amount was $250. The property was worth about, I don't know, 4 1/4. And so what she did is she bought it subject to the house. She gave the owner, like 10 or 20 grand to move, bought it as is, and then she used a hard money second trust to buy the house. So she did a subject to for, I think, $250, hard money for $90. I don't know the exact numbers, but she got into that house with no money down.
All right.
And then she proceeded to wholesale the property, in this case to Ed, where Ed bought a subject to property that he has as a rental. So this investor bought the property, no money down, using a combination of subject to financing and hard money lending to do it.
Yeah.
And so there are a variety.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, and then Ed bought it.
Yeah, and so there's a variety of different ways where you could either buy properties, combination of these different financing techniques, whether you're going to wholesale it, whether you're going to keep it as a fix and flip, or keep it as a buy and hold, or whether you're going to fix and flip it. And so in this case, another case where somebody bought a property with no money down.
Yeah, and it's just hard to believe that you can do all this with no money down. But I've seen plenty of cases where we've got a guy starting with, or a person starting with no money, and then suddenly after 3 years they have 5 properties in a portfolio. And then what do you do? That's another whole level. So you got 5 properties in a portfolio. How do you make use of all of the equity that you're building in those? That's a whole nother topic. But this is really how you're building long-term wealth. If you're buying 5 houses over 5 years, that's all you're going to need for your retirement. That's basically, if you start young, you do that aggressively. And I mean, one house a year is not that hard to manage. I mean, if you spend 10 hours a week, you can definitely get one house a year.
Yep. And then there was another, and this reminds me of another deal that we had in Richmond in the museum district.
Yeah.
And the house fixed up was worth about $900,000 to $1.1 million, somewhere in there. And there was a first trust on the house. There was a second trust on the house, which is considered a home equity line of credit.
Yeah.
And then he came to us for a hard money loan.
Yeah.
In third position.
Yeah.
And so the total encumbrances was like $600,000 on a $900 to $1.1 million house. And so the way it worked was that He simply bought the house for $300,000. He did it. No, he bought it for $400,000 because he subject to the first trust at $200,000. He's subject to the HELOC for $100,000. He used our hard money loan as a third trust for $300,000, of which $100,000 of that went to the owner.
Yeah.
So they put $100,000 in their pocket, and then the other $200,000 went to the renovation.
Yeah. And then he
And
exited.
then he exited it for, I don't remember, 900, 950 or $1 million. And so all three of us got paid back. The hard money got paid back at 300. The first trust got paid back at 200. The HELOC got paid back at 100, and he kept the rest as profit.
And he could have kept the house too.
And he
There
could
was
have kept the
another
house,
option.
right?
So he could have refinanced the whole thing once it was fixed up.
Right. So understanding all of the financing mechanisms and what they mean, you can utilize a variety of them to actually buy a house for no money down. And so the last category that we haven't really talked about is the loan assumption bucket of financing. And that's
you don't
simply
see that too often anymore.
right.
We
but
used to see a lot of it, but now we do see. I mean, we saw a VA assumption like a week ago.
right. And because of the interest rates being high the way they are, high being it's funny because to me 6.5% to 7% is a normal interest rate.
It does seem all right.
To a lot of newer investors, they think it's high.
The problem is the price, right? The problem is that the prices are so high
Yep.
with a 7% loan.
Yep.
So my mind is still like 7% is okay, but like $900,000 for a small house is not okay.
Yeah.
That's where the shift is for me.
Yeah. And so lately, though, you can assume VA loans, Veterans Affairs, FHA loans, USDA loans. But the difference between assuming one of those loans and actually buying it subject to the loan,
You got to qualify.
you got to qualify.
So
you
that
got to
in
go through the
itself
process.
is a problem if you don't have steady W-2 income.
Right.
But if you do have a good W-2 income and you're also looking for deals, that's a great way.
That's a great way.
That's a great way.
Right. And don't
Because
think.
it's not a big deal to assume a loan.
Right,
You
and
just
don't
fill out the
think-
form,
right.
paperwork. It's like an hour.
Right. We did cover something called Veterans Administration loans, VA loans.
Yeah.
Don't think that just because you're not a veteran, you can't assume a VA loan. You can assume a VA loan being a non-veteran.
Yeah, there are methods,
Yeah.
but it has to have some cooperation with the veteran himself.
Yeah. Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
So those are
Those are good methods.
Those are
Thank
good
you.
methods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are all good.
Yeah.
So you too,
Yeah,
you
and
too
just
can
to,
get
just,
yourself a
just
house.
to emphasize about the DSCR, I've done that on one property, and the one you were talking about, once I have it fixed up and have tenants in, that would be a good time to do a DSCR. And that it was a little weird the last one I did before, but as I understand it, generally the key is how much cash flow there is what they're going to base it on,
That's
and
the
most
coverage
of them
ratio.
seem
Yeah,
to
but you might
want
not 'cause of
at
the
least a
interest rate
good
in the first.
credit score. But they're not necessarily looking for you to have a huge income, as I understand. I don't know if guys know if that's right. If it's really just the cash flow and
It's
that you
cash
have a
flow
good
on
credit
debt service
score.
coverage ratio.
It's
That's
only
the one.
only the cash flow of the property.
They're
That's
looking
it.
at the individual asset.
That's it.
And
That's
this is an extension of what we used to have for our whole portfolio. They would look at the debt
Right,
service coverage
right.
ratio of this many years.
1.2,
Yeah,
right.
1.2 and 1.15,
Right.
1.25. Yeah, this is the ratio at which you want to have dollars covering the expenditures. So this is what they're looking at on an individualized basis. But you brought up another
Well, here's
point.
another thing with Ed. So on your Culpeper property, Ed, you're never going to get a DSCR loan.
Unless I pay off the right. If the
Never,
other one
never. You're running a 2 and
gets
7. You're
pulled.
running what? 2 and 7/8. So I would
Yeah.
keep that 2 and 7/8 until I paid it off.
You could get a HELOC behind
Yeah,
it.
what you're going to do is they're out with a new product now called a 5-day HELOC. So there are investor banks now lending on HELOCs up to $400,000 HELOC on investor properties. And so you would qualify for a HELOC on that property. So once you've owned it for, I think the numbers for you is I think the house is worth fixed up $450 and you're only going to owe what, $250 on it, $225. So you're going to have
Yes, even less, I think.
yeah,
but
even
yeah.
less. So you're going to have
Something like
considerable equity in that property. And there's a new product out there now called a 5-day HELOC on investment properties up to $400,000. And so
See,
that's
I'm
something-
learning something on our podcast.
Yeah.
I hadn't
Yeah.
heard of that before. Do you think that type of lender will care that it's a subject to rather than a first
They might.
trust actually in my name.
That might be a problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
That
it
might
could be.
we'll
And
see.
but what's interesting about this though is when I ran the numbers, even if the equity is quote unquote trapped, the numbers because of the interest rates and everything else are so good that the relatively small amount of money that's stuck there is just fine. At some point, if the property appreciates enough, that might become another thought that wow, there's a lot of equity that can't be tapped. But I wouldn't mind having that problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a good problem to have because I think you bought in there at a pretty good discount anyway to begin with on the equity side. And, that property is what, a 2018-19 built house. And it's very,
It's so much
and
easier to
it's very
deal
close
with.
to downtown
Yeah.
Culpeper where, the government facilities are going in there, data centers are going in there. And so I think that's going to be the new 2.5 hour window from Washington, D.C., because they have to replicate their computer systems. And so that area is just going to do nothing but grow.
Yeah.
And that property is going to just do nothing but get equity in it.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I agree.
Well, and I think that related to our topic, I think that also raises the point sort of Sam talked about, is to really try to read about and understand the market around here.
Yeah.
Like in DC, they're doing all sorts of work on the Anacostia River with parks, and then the Commander Stadium that's
Yeah.
going to go in. And if you don't really think about it or know, you think, gee, that's not the better side of town over
Oh,
there.
yeah, that's the best
But
spot.
there's every reason to think that it should go up. So for that young fellow who might live in that property, he actually can see, okay, are my renters causing problem? I live next to them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and he feels comfortable in the neighborhood, and so he can, that the extra little bit of security or risk or whatever as continues to get cleared up, that's the place for him to buy. The same fourplex in Northeast would probably be prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, you can do things for
like this
security.
Culpeper thing's great where it's far out, but it's good for that reason.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
a great property.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, so this has been good.
Yeah, this has been good. No money down, get yourself an investment home.
Yeah, as soon as possible. The hardest part is to go find it.
Yeah, definitely.
Financing's the easy part.
Thanks.